Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Melody Rose. I'm a registered nurse. I'm also a doctor of nursing practice. I live in Middle Tennessee. I wanted to take the time to make several educational videos regarding cannabis that include the history of the plant in the United States, the use both past and present, and then look at some of the controversy that surrounds this plant. I'm providing an email address for you to send any questions you might have. That's located on the first slide, Dr. Rose, cbdnurse@gmail.com. My goal is to respond to any questions within 48 hours. These videos will be research-based with up-to-date information that can be validated through scholarly resources. I want you to be able to make your own decisions on using or not using cannabis products as they gain legal status and popularity in our country. I will disclose that I work with a company that provides internet sales of CBD oil and products. However, all content provided in this presentation and those presentations that will follow is evidence-based. The genus is the plant category, in this case, cannabis. The species is the plant family. When we talk about both hemp and marijuana, we're talking about the plant family of sativa. When you put these two names together, the binomial nomenclature is cannabis sativa. There are three subspecies that we normally think of when we talk about hemp and marijuana. Cannabis sativa is hemp or industrial hemp. Cannabis sativa indicus is marijuana. And then a third, not quite as well known, is Cannabis sativa ruderalis. Cannabis sativa, hemp or industrial hemp, is a tall, slender plant known for its long fibers. It usually grows 10 to 15 feet tall. It's a non-flowering male plant. It's low in delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or known as THC, which is a psychotropic agent. It's also inherently higher in CBD or cannabidiol. It also grows in many different environments. Cannabis sativa indicus, known as marijuana, and there's an alternative spelling for marijuana on the screen, is a shorter, wider plant. It is a flowering female plant, and it contains a higher content of THC, 1.5% THC. This plant grows well in hot, humid areas. Cannabis sativa ruderalis is a short, stocky, auto-flowering plant. It grows easily in many environments. It's a hybrid of sativa and indicus. It's low in THC. And right now it's not considered a plant of significance. However, that may change as the field of cannabis continues to grow. The medicinal uses of cannabis can be documented as far back as 5000 BC in China. Every major culture of the world has used cannabis medicinally. Cannabis also has many other uses, such as food, feed, fuel, fabric, paint, mortar, fiberboard, compost, paper filler, paper, bedding, clothing, cordage, bagging, and much more. As a matter of fact, in the United States, the original Declaration of Independence was printed on paper made from hemp. In 1916, the United States government predicted all paper would come from industrial hemp by the year 1940. 1 acre of hemp could make as much paper as 4.1 acres of trees. The only time cannabis has ever been regulated in the United States has been in the 20th and 21st centuries. So what happened to cannabis? Well, prior to 1937, there were no regulations on cannabis in the United States. As a matter of fact, growing hemp in the 17th and 18th century was required by law. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were both hemp farmers. But a perfect storm was brewing. Along came alcohol prohibition. This lasted 13 years. It went from 1920 to 1933. This was considered a failed social and political experiment of the government. As a result of Prohibition, we saw the rise of gangsters, bootleggers, speakeasies, and rum runners. In order to enforce Prohibition, the Department of Treasury created the Bureau of Prohibition. These were the people that tried to enforce Prohibition. Well, when Prohibition ended, there was a whole bureau of people that were out of work. So let's look at 4 confounding elements. These are 4 people that at the time had influence over the situation. William Randolph Hearst was a major newspaper man. He was also a major timber investor. Pierre DuPont of DuPont Industries. DuPont Industries was developing products that would replace hemp products, industrial hemp products. Andrew Mellon was the Secretary of Treasury and also represented big money. And then Harry Anslinger was the Department of Treasury Commissioner of Narcotics. William Randolph Hearst was a very successful businessman. He is known for his newspapers. He's also known for sensational journalism. His businesses expanded into film services, animation studios, publishing of books and magazines. He had interests in mining, ranching, and forestry. He's known as a collector of art and antiques. He also had interest in politics. In the mid-1930s, and this is in the middle of the Great Depression, the Hearst finances were in trouble, as many were in the Great Depression. Hearst newspapers began reporting sensational negative stories regarding marijuana and cannabis and the ill effects of using it. Pierre DuPont was part of the DuPont family. The DuPont business was founded in 1802 in Wilmington, Delaware. The DuPont business originally made gunpowder. In the 1920s and 30s, DuPont was developing products such as polymers, neoprene, polyester, and nylon. Pierre DuPont also held patent rights to the sulfuric acid wood pulp paper process. New DuPont products and paper process were in direct competition with industrial hemp products. Andrew Mellon was a banker, businessman, and politician. He also served as the United States Secretary of Treasury from 1921 to 1932. He helped establish the Carnegie Mellon University. He was considered a big money person. During Prohibition, he secured a medicinal permit from the Treasury Department for Old Overholt Whiskey, a company that he was joint owner of. He was also instrumental in placing a tax on cannabis, which crushed the industrial hemp industry. He also appointed Harry Anslinger, his nephew by marriage, as the founding commissioner of the Department of Treasury's Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Harry Anslinger worked as an investigator for the Pennsylvania Railroad. He worked military and police organizations investigating international drug trafficking. He influenced many national and international drug policies. He was the founding commissioner of the Treasury's Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Prior to 1930, Anslinger had no documented objections to marijuana. Speculation suggests that the end of Prohibition and unemployed Bureau of Prohibition agents changed his outlook on marijuana. He published many critical and sensationalized articles describing the abuse of marijuana after Prohibition. The perfect storm plus the 4 confounding elements leads to an implied conspiracy against hemp. William Randolph Hearst uses his newspaper empire to print sensationalized accounts of marijuana abuse and demonize the value of the plant. His motive was to protect and promote his timberland investment for tree harvest and the production of paper. DuPont Industries was developing new products by competing directly with hemp products, plus Pierre DuPont owned patent rights to the wood pulp paper process. By eliminating the competition of hemp, DuPont could grow their business in new products. Andrew Mellon was a businessman and an investor in the East. By supporting a tax on hemp, he created revenue for the government and also helped industries he had invested in, such as DuPont, grow their business. Harry Anslinger saw an opportunity to redirect the focus of an entire department of unemployed agents in a new direction, one he had worked in before, drug enforcement. This promoted his personal fame as the founding commissioner of the Bureau of Narcotics. It increased revenue through tax collection and gave a new direction to a previously retired Bureau of Prohibition to become the Bureau of Narcotics. The result of the assault on marijuana was the taxation and regulation of cannabis known as the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. Exemptions were given to some businesses, such as birdseed manufacturers and hemp farmers. The American Medical Association was against the passage of this bill because they still considered the use of marijuana for medicinal purposes. In 1941, cannabis was removed from the United States Pharmacopoeia, and the medicinal use was no longer recognized. However, in 1942, the United States Army and the Department of Agriculture produced a film called Hemp for Victory, encouraging farmers to go back to hemp farming to help with the efforts of World War II. In 1944, the LaGuardia Report challenged the regulation of cannabis, but this was ignored. From the time of the LaGuardia Report to 1970, not a lot happened, but in 1970, the Nixon administration enacted the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act. This act placed cannabis as a Schedule I drug. Schedule I drugs are defined as highly dangerous and have no medical value. Schedule I drugs will not have any ongoing research associated to them. In 1972, the Schaefer Commission investigated marijuana and reported there was therapeutic treatment of nausea and vomiting related to cancer chemotherapy and reduction of intraocular pressure in open-angle glaucoma. But this information was ignored, and marijuana remains a Schedule I drug today. Robert C. Randall was arrested in 1972 for possession of marijuana. He used the common law doctrine of necessity to defend himself. He was found innocent because he was using marijuana to treat his glaucoma. He was actually growing his own marijuana at home. A federal judge ruled Randall's use constituted a medical necessity. The ruling led to Investigational New Drug, IND, Compassionate Use Research Program. In 1973, the delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, was identified as the psychotropic agent in cannabis. This is significant because this allows the designation between marijuana and hemp. This will become important later because of the concentration of THC will be used to define the difference between hemp. 0.3% or less is defined as hemp. Above that designation will be considered marijuana. The 1970s saw the beginning of states accepting medical marijuana even though it was still a federally illegal drug. 1980, Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics was founded by Robert Randall and Alice O'Leary. This was the first functional organization that was dedicated to the medical marijuana issues. If you remember, Robert Randall is the gentleman that was arrested in 1972 for treating glaucoma with medical marijuana. Alice O'Leary was his wife. In 1988, Judge Francis Young ruled marijuana had an acceptable medical value and should be rescheduled. The ruling was rejected by the DEA. In 1991, the Investigational New Drug Program was terminated. Existing patients were allowed to stay. No new patients were accepted. And if you stop and look at what was going on with healthcare in our system, we had many, many new HIV positive patients and AIDS patients that were trying to get into the Investigational New Drug Program. And this, I believe, is part of why this program was canceled. So from 1991 through December of 2018, 33 states and the District of Columbia have passed laws that broadly legalize marijuana in some form. On December 20th, 2018, President Trump signed the Farm Bill. This makes cannabis, which is less than 0.3% THC on dry weight basis, a legal crop in the United States. Products of this crop are no longer considered a Schedule I drug. The current legislation that's in Congress is called CARES Act, Compassionate Access, Research Expansion, and Respect States. This act will amend the Controlled Substance Act, reschedule marijuana from Schedule I to II, allow states to import treatments, provide veterans access, and expand opportunities for research, and permits financial services for businesses that sell cannabis. Know your state laws. Not all states have the same laws, so please be aware of what is legal and what is not legal in your state. Also, please know what your employer's policies are. An employer does not necessarily have to follow a state law. So if a state says that marijuana is legal, an employer does not necessarily have to follow that. Most healthcare employers do not allow THC to positive in a drug screen. So even though a state may be legal, if you test positive for THC, you may end up parting company with your employer. Also understand that cannabis laws are going to be changing and probably changing rapidly. So if this is something of interest or concern to you, please be aware of this and watch for the changes. Be aware of that. CBD products are made from cannabis that is 0.3% or less THC. This is the definition of hemp as opposed to marijuana. I'm going to put two last things on this slide. Again, my email address, drrosecbdnurse@gmail.com, and then a web link to the CBD company that I work with, www.hempworks, HEMPWORX.com/Melody Rose, MELODYROSE. This company makes a zero THC CBD oil that if you are a healthcare worker, you can take and you will not test positive for THC. That's why I went with this company, because I am a healthcare worker and I cannot afford to test positive for THC. Please feel free to email me with questions or take a peek at the HempWorks website and look at their products. Thank you so much.